Maddie, it's a brand new year, and we're still here. We made it. Let me know when you could hear me. Steve, good to see you, bud.
Good to see you, man.
Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year. You know what's also great to see around here? Let me check, hold on one second. Make sure the audio is good. But you know what's also great to see around here is all of these racks, okay? That's got a nice rack, that's got a nice rack, that's got a nice rack, and over here, that also has a nice rack.
Whoa, that's a super nice rack. Looks a little worn.
Yeah, that's a used one. That's a used one.
Hey, Kyle. Well, with that being said, it's time to get on their way. What's our subject today? What are we talking about, Steve?
Racks, man. Racks on racks on racks.
Like the song from Taika?
No. We're going to be talking about racks today, and we are going to go visit the man, the myth, the legend, Justin Smith. But also, we have our very own Lolo in the shop, in the house. Take it away, Lolo.
There you are.
Oh no.
She's not.
She said, oh, no.
She does get a little bit embarrassed, but we like to poke her, especially because she's getting embarrassed. That's why.
I'm fine. It was just really close.
Earlier you just said bring it, I think is what you said.
I'm ready.
And so since we're going to be talking about racks, maybe we can embarrass her even more. You guys throw out a little bit if you want to. She actually said that you guys don't ask questions amongst or about all the people that are doing the parts assembly when we're in this area.
Yeah, no one's got love for parts.
See? So I think let's see if you guys can prove her wrong.
But you know what everyone has love for? Racks.
Racks.
All right? And
right.
Lolo, it looks like you got a nice rack over there.
Yeah, what are you working on there, Lolo?
Thank you.
You're
this
welcome.
This is an X3 rack, steering rack. All laid out, ready to go.
So since everybody in this area is assembling racks today, we figured it might be a good time to revisit what makes these racks awesome and how they differ from the stock stuff. And also to let you guys know that the X3 racks are back in stock. They may not be on the site yet. I'm not sure if you actually turned them on yet, did you?
Not yet, because I'm definitely not going to beat the rush.
So that means the racks will be turned on probably first thing in the morning. You guys can order X3 racks again tomorrow. And let's see how many that Lauren and the guys can put together today and see if we can keep up with the orders for tomorrow, right?
Oh boy, that's a challenge.
I think right now you got a few back ordered.
Yes, just a few.
But back to racks and details about racks. If Steve has anything about racks, then we'll pause and let him talk about them. But as far
Mr. Sparkles, real quick.
Mr. Sparkles said, I love racks.
well,
me too, buddy.
everybody does, everyone should.
Everyone loves a nice rack.
That's
Sparkles?
right. Mr. Sparkles.
Yeah, you got to say it though with a Mr. Sparkles.
Off The Simpsons, he's going for. Not like Mr. Sparkles, off The Simpsons, Mr. Sparkles.
Oh, okay.
We also
So is that
got to
Lisp or not
finally.
Lisp?
We also got to finally. You guys are back. We did take a little bit of time off.
Yeah, it's the holidays, man. Even us, even we have to take a couple of days off. And a lot of this, the reason was that everybody was out working in the dunes and kind of spread out all over the place, and it just didn't work out. Plus, we wanted to take a couple of days to ourselves. So, but we're back, and we're going to talk about whatever you guys can bring up. That's actually another subject throughout this whole thing. We want you guys' suggestions. We're running out of ideas. Obviously, we're coming back and talking about racks. So if you can bring us your ideas as to what to talk about, maybe if it's not racks, it could be pinion shafts.
Ooh, shafts.
We could talk about shafts.
I would love a whole entire shaft episode, to be honest with you.
This is true. Chase would probably be the one that loves it the most.
We did get a super awesome rockin' dad said all racks matter. I do agree. I do agree.
Very, very true.
Very true.
So I'll work through some of the details on an X3 rack because we do get questions about these constantly, even though we've done videos about them before. But the problem that exists in a factory CanAm rack is that the rack itself is internally a cylindrical design. In other words, the rack gear is round as opposed to a square rectangular system. And when you do that, what happens is that rack gear that's sliding back and forth inside the rack, that this pinion is actually rotating and moving back and forth, it can clock inside the rack body in a circular motion. Now, when that happens, this center link with tie rods attached to it, ultimately these tie rods are on the tires on the outside. Whenever you hit rough stuff, bumps, rocks, and it kicks that tie rod in and out, what happens is it rotates the whole rack body up and down. And when it rotates that rack body vertically in the car, two things happen. One, you lose the alignment and you get a lot of bump steer. That tires start kicking, towing in, towing out uncontrollably whenever you hit something. Also, when that rack gear rotates, it binds against the pinion gear itself. And when that thing binds, then the electronic power steering that you're feeling in the steering wheel goes into a fail-safe mode and it gets immediately stiff. We feel that stiff shaft and racks.
Yes.
Yeah, we're touching on all three.
I do have one question for you, Justin.
Yes.
You said that there's a shaft that slides in and out of the rack. Now, as that shaft slides in and out of the rack, does grease ever come out the tip? Or the end, sorry.
The tip. Oh,
yeah, I'm sorry, the end. I'm sorry, the end. I meant the end.
Yeah, sometimes grease comes out the tip, Steve. Thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome. I was just making sure, guys. Thank you.
You know, you're talking as if the people had that question.
Yes, that for sure. It was something 69 asked it.
Yeah. That's who asked it, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're
welcome. Back to electronic power steering. So what you guys feel in the car when this rack binds up is the steering wheel having a kickback and a feedback, or when you're turning in the whoops, it's not smooth in the wheel, it's violent in the steering wheel to the point where it'll put your arms to sleep if you try to fight that. It could rip the wheel out of your hands and hurt your fingers or break a finger. Those are the worst possible scenarios, especially if in the dunes you come around a corner and you drop a tire into one little hole. It'll try and pull the tire all the way to the right and the wheel out of your hand. So that binding is what we fight in the factory system. Now, as the rack gets worn out, this gets worse, the feedback gets worse, and eventually the rack can fail, or the feedback is so much that you actually lose the power steering units. And we see failures in EPS units all the time because of excessive rack wear. Now, that's the factory system. If you guys have any questions on that, otherwise, we'll go into the billet rack that we built and designed to try and cure that. So here's a complete rack that matches this factory unit. So if we're looking at them exactly the same, then that's how they match. Pinion, center link, tie rod locations, center link, and then we change our tie rod from a ball and socket style that tends to be weak to a rod end or 5/8 rod end on this. Now this system internally, you can see what Lauren's got laid out on the assembly for today would be all of the parts included in a Billet X3 rack that make up the whole system. Now, simply put, this would be the top of the rack. We'll get to that in a second. Bottom half. So two halves that we're staring at right now, if I get this right. I just flipped it around, upside down. There we go. So, rack gear. Now this is zero grease. I'm just gonna throw these parts in here real quick so you guys can see what's up. Now the fit on this rack gear inside the rack body is the same as a main bearing in a motor. So about 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch. This is a very, very tight exact fit so that we have perfect tolerances and no play. Now also, we would have bronze bushing, hardware, and other components. You see how that slid together perfect. Back and forth. And we can still move that by hand even without grease. I don't have pinion installed right now, but this is where the pinion would go. And that pinion would run the rack gear back and forth. We've got side covers. This is actually a new design side cover from the original ones. This side cover has got a little Route 66 shape to it, as opposed to the rectangular ones that we used to have on this. The reason for that is we're gaining, overlap it like this, we're gaining some clearance on the bottom corner from the old design to the new design, and that has a little bit more clearance to a lower control arm if it's all the way compressed. Now the only lower control arms that we ever had an issue with or a clearance problem against the rack was CT Raceworks high clearance lower boxed arm, and only a few hit it. So not all of those did, but a few. So because of that arm. We redesigned the cap so that we didn't have any clearance problems even with those aftermarket systems. There's never a clearance problem with standard arms or with pretty much anybody else's long travel kit, so you don't have to worry about that. What'd you have, Steve?
Triple Digit Sketch wants to know, is there a difference between the ratio between our rack and the stock rack?
There is not. The ratio is identical, but let me also give you a caveat on that. It is the same ratio as earlier Can-Ams. It is not the same as a 2020 or 2021. The reason is the 2020s and 2021s, the factory slowed the ratio down. So you may have had in the previous racks 3/4 of a turn in the steering wheel from center to full lock, back to center, 3/4 of a turn back to full lock. On the new racks, it's 7/8 of a turn, so you have to turn it farther to get the same distance full lock to full lock. That's a lesser ratio or a slower ratio. It's a slower reaction. Why did they do that? They did it for multiple reasons, but the main reason was when you put a slower ratio in a system, it makes you feel like you have more power steering because there's less power required to turn it slow than it is to turn it fast. So the power systems, or EPS power assist systems, feel like they have a ton more power, and ultimately that feels easier for you to drive. But for a lot of people, it's not quick enough to be able to make the turn left and right on high-speed desert or in the dunes or any other real driving, unless it's like short course is always speeding systems up. They're not slowing it down. So we have the same ratio as 2019 and older, and we have a quicker ratio than the 2020 and 21s. Hopefully that answers your question. And what else you got?
Mike Dubs, Tube Sock Steve, LOL ran into you at Arrowhead Mall.
He did. So I was walking through, we just got pictures with Santa, and I was walking through and I heard Tube Sock Steve! And I was looking around, I saw the guy and I waved at him, but we kept going. So shoot me a DM, I'll send you a shirt.
Steve, you had some pretty cool stuff going on this holiday too. I hear that we're pretty far along in our sock production.
Yes, very close. Just a couple little things Justin and I talked about. He's got really big calves. I do not, and there was a calf issue. So we got to figure that out real quick.
Stretch the sock
could
over
not
my calf,
stretch it over his calf. So a couple little details to work on, but yeah, we're right there.
You have a Tube Socks line coming out.
Yes,
there you go. What do you got, Matt?
Cameron Condre actually has two things. First, he said perky racks are good, worn out racks are not so much.
Perky racks versus worn out, that's a good one. I like that.
I do like that.
And then he asked if using a Hess steering quickener, any reason your rack would not work on an XP1000?
Not at all. So a quickener isn't going to affect anything to do with the rack other than the feel that you have in the steering wheel. When you put a quickener on a car, then the steering is going to get a lot heavier. It's going to feel like you have half the power steering that you used to. That would be the only thing to consider, but it has nothing to do with the rack. You can absolutely run that with our system, so no problem there.
Got a question on the Turbo S race rack. Will it work with ZRP tie rods?
Actually, I don't know what's on the end of the ZRP. I think that if they run a clevis that's a 5/8 thread, then yes, you'll end up using our rack with our rod end, and then you'll use our clevis supplied, which is 5/8 thread, and that should thread into a ZRP tie rod.
Are we going to make tie rods?
That is a good question, and yes, we are. Thank you, Steve, for the segue. We are going to be building tie rods. We're in the middle of producing 3 or 4 different models worth, and we're going to have 3 or 4 more models worth done by the end of this month, and then we'll launch the line. So you guys will have a tie rod that's available from us for our rack, as well as from us for your car, even with a stock rack.
We do have a couple people wondering if you could stroke the rack one more time.
And I'm going to preface this next one with Mike Dubs wanting to know, so since your rack is just a bolt-on, he said, and there's nothing wrong with the bolt-on.
There's nothing wrong with bolt-ons.
Racks
There's
are
nothing
great.
wrong with
And
bolt-ons.
then
That's right.
Caesar 0343, and this will probably be good to get us back on track here. Is it the size that makes one rack better than the other? And is it that the case here?
I don't think that's getting us back on track, but yeah.
But I do like where you're going with it, and if you would just take a look at the X3 stuff, in particularly if you take these boots off the end of the rack, then you can see that the rack that we're building is structurally much, much bigger than the factory stuff. Even though we're only about 1/2 of a pound heavier than the factory rack is, when you figure all the joints swapping over to rod ends and everything else. So this rack, being an indestructible system, is about the same weight as factory. So you're not gaining any negative with extra weight, which you would expect if it's getting stronger, right? What do you got, Matt?
Heath wants to know if we have one for the Talon yet.
We don't have a rack for the Talon. It is on our list. We're working out the XP Pro rack right now, and as soon as we're done with that, then we'll get on the Talon. So sometime soon. Steve.
Pfizer B said, I'm getting feedback in my steering wheel. Just turning my wheels stopped on pavement. What's the best way to figure out if it's my rack or my power steering? He has a 2018 Turbo S.
Turbo S. One thing you can do is jack the car up to where the tires are off the ground, turn the key, and if when you do that, the steering goes from, actually let me back up, jack the car up off the ground with the key off. Grab the steering wheel and turn it all the way, both directions, full lock. If it's smooth and you don't have any kind of feedback issues at that point, then turn the key on and do it again. If all of a sudden you've picked up a bunch of feedback because the power unit's on, then you have a problem with the power unit. That'll tell you exactly where your problem is. If you have feedback problems or it's binding when you don't have the key on, then you have a mechanical problem more than likely, and you look at the factory rack.
Okay, this is a non-rack question, but it is a good question. One of these guys just said, side by side, Compa George said, sorry for not asking about the racks, but he got a 2021 Smart Shock and he did get our spring kit. Does it need to be recalibrated after he puts our springs on it?
No, you do not have to recalibrate the computer system for a spring kit. The only reason you would have to do that is if you unplugged it, turned the power on with one of the shocks unplugged and you got a shock light, then you would want to disconnect the battery and reset the system, and that would be the only reason, but not because you have springs.
3Nick6 has a question specifically for Lolo.
Ooh. See you now. Be careful what you ask for.
I know. I don't know what this means.
This is great.
When are you going to take the Christmas decorations down?
I told you someone was going to say this to me. None of your damn business.
And what did I tell you to tell him? Screw off.
Can I say it? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Go
want the racks done,
Go
people.
shaft yourself.
Yeah, man, I don't have time. All right.
shaft yourself.
There are racks to build.
Somebody does want to know if they take down our Christmas decorations, can they get a discount?
Ooh,
Yes.
that's gonna be okay.
Yes.
I'm in.
You guys
I'm
just
in.
signed up. If that's you, then DM us. We'll have you come in and help out. It was actually Lolo and it was Steve. They're the two that put almost all the decorations up, so they would probably appreciate your help.
Unfortunately.
Early November, by the way, I believe they went up.
Yes.
You know, an answer to another question I've gotten is yes, we do leave our Christmas lights up all year round, just like a lot of people at their house. If you look up at the rafters and some of the trusses,
Those do not
those
come
lights
down.
are there all year.
Do not
So
go down.
you'll see that in other videos.
I got purple lights in my house.
Lauren, when you're doing X3 racks, about how many of these do you do a day if nobody bugs you?
Oh, if nobody bugs me and I'm like timing myself, I could do like 16 of these.
16?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But that's
Actually,
like
I think you were
sweating.
going to say about 10.
I mean, that's no. If everything goes smoothly, 16.
So my point with that is that there's at least, if nobody bothers her, there's about 30 minutes of labor installing one of these per rack, or assembling one of these per rack. And on a day where someone bugs you, that's 45 minutes per. So there's a lot of love thrown into these, and a lot of the clearances that are checked throughout the process. It's a lot like assembling the bottom end on a motor, checking clearances, checking bearing side clearances, and things like that to make sure that everything's perfect. But we throw a lot of time into that. I might just skip right through the assembly process because that's probably a little bit on the boring side, but I will say this, there's only really 2 wearing items in the whole rack for an X3, and that is by design. One, this bronze bushing in the front. The reason that we have that is on purpose because we want to be able to replace this bushing fairly inexpensively as this wears out over time when you get rocks and dirt in there, and easily swap this out and not have to worry about a rack body. Another wearing spot is going to be the front bushing on the pinion and also this bearing on that pinion. These are absolutely wearing items. They're about the only ones that we've ever swapped out on any of these cars. I mean, we purposely get these racks back if they need anything and do all the work for free, because we want to see the wear time and overtime what's gone on with the racks. And I mean, really, what have you ever replaced?
Okay, this is very rare. I think I've replaced maybe 2 of these.
In 600 or 700 racks.
Yeah, in years, you know? And these, I mean, I typically do the bearing just in good measure, like...
Whether it even needs it or not.
Yeah, since it's there. This is still pretty rare too, especially on the X3 rack.
So they're pretty much straightforward. There's nothing to worry about as long as people are bolting it in the car correctly and doing the proper shim process that we talk about and have videos about. Actually, I'll talk about that here in a second. Steve's got something.
Mike Dubs wants to know, all jokes aside, what is the lifespan of our racks?
Great question. So on an X3 rack, we have run one rack without taking it apart for any prep work or anything in our race car for 1 full season without any issue at all. Now that was 11 races and about 4,000 race miles in the race car, and probably the worst conditions and most abuse, with 33-inch tires and a ton of power steering behind it, which means you got a tire force, power steering holding it, and the racks in the middle taking abuse on all of it. So we did not prep that rack at all. We ran it the whole year just to find out. When we took it apart, we really didn't see much in that rack. If you remember, Lauren, we just threw pinion bearings at it and a front bronze bushing, greased it, and threw it back together. So that's the rack that's in our car now, ready for this next season. Now, we have had racks come back where we've had play. Typically, the play in the rack might be in this pinion right here, and usually the play in the pinion is the bearing, or it's the shimming, or the pinion itself wearing in to the tooth pattern on the rack gear. Now, both of these are extremely hard materials, but we have one that's a little softer than the other, or one that's a little harder than the other on purpose so they don't take each other out. And we do expect to get pattern or gear tooth pattern. It's not like it's wearing out, it's like it's wearing in. And we can't cycle the racks in a machine to get that, to get it here. So we have seen that probably 20 times out of 600 racks. So that's about it. What do you got, Steve?
Diversified Fab. Sorry, I was trying he did say, he said we pre-ran the Baja a bunch with no grease during R&D.
That's what I was laughing about.
That's actually very true. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
So another part of our R&D process with the rack,
thanks, Jason,
was we assembled one of these and put it on our pre-runner for the Baja 1000, and we assembled it with just WD-40. We didn't put any grease in it. We didn't do anything at all, and we ran it the whole Baja 1000 pre-run. Now, when we pulled it apart, what was wrong with it? Really nothing. We did see some wear pattern in the body because it was WD-40 and not grease, and it didn't have enough lubrication at the end of it. But it didn't fail, and it didn't tighten up. I think we ran it for another 1,000 miles, it probably would have gotten tight. But that was about it. That was part of the other things that we've done with those racks, all of our racks actually. Steve?
Danny Akala 107 says, I have your BSD tie rods. Will they work with this rack? Does it include inside rod ends?
So they will not work. They will not work with this rack because the tie rods have to be longer to work with the billet rack. But that's the only thing you have to swap. So you can keep the rod ends, jam nuts, spacers on the spindle side, and you just take the tie rod itself, unthread that, and we will get you a tie rod that is the right length for this rack, and then everything will work. Done.
One question that I have seen a few times, Justin, what is the price tag on our shock therapy race racks?
Well, the XP or any of the Razor racks, if you go over to the next station where actually Razor racks are being put together today, the Razor racks are $1,000, and the X3 or CanAm racks are $2,000. Now, on top of that, you have a choice for a clevis, and you have a choice for what you might do in a tie rod here shortly. But those are the only extras on these, and we use the highest quality rod ends made, Teflon lined, chromoly, and plated for all of our products. So you're not going to have any squeaky rod ends or any rod ends that wear out prematurely. We've done a ton of testing in that department as well. Back to the X3 rack, another really cool feature on the rack is when this is assembled completely, I'm going to take some of the parts out of the way so I can actually kind of show you guys. This is a stainless cover. It runs across the front of the rack as it cycles. These racks are not waterproof. They are water resistant. We do not have them 100% sealed because of this dust cover in the front, but the grease that's behind the dust cover, sealing the system and lubricating the system, that grease prevents water from getting into the gear assembly, and the gears are also plated, so there's no rusting in any of these. I've heard people say that before, that they've seen our racks rust. That's absolutely BS. There is no rust in any of this stuff. We've seen every single rack after thousands and thousands of miles and years of time, and with plated components, it's just not the case. So this dust cover across the front can be set up in the centered position and locked with a bolt. So when you guys install these, doing the alignments, all you do is put a bolt right here in this center position, and it locks the rack for you while the rack's in the car, and now you can set the alignment on the whole car and not worry about having the steering wheel centered or the rack centered because it's locked for you. Another thing is the adjustable center link. So this center link that's going back and forth in the rack, just like this complete one that's sitting right over here, is adjustable. So if you look behind it, there's a gear tooth assembly, kind of like you see in tooling on a mill or any machinist. These teeth interlock. You can also see the laser lines on the side. So you can raise or lower the center link in the rack to help with your alignment. So you can tune all the bump steer out of your car if you have some remaining, if you want to take the time and do that. Like say for race car applications, you have that, you can make it perfect. Maybe in a play car, you might just take big swings at it with a BSD kit that we offer. But if you wanted to spend the time, you can do the detail work and you can change it on the rack and make it exactly perfect. Steve.
Robbie Frazier wants to know, what grade of aluminum is the rack made out of?
7075, I believe, in hard anodized all the way around. So we spend a lot of money on our components and all of our materials. The goal is that this rack cannot be made better. You can't buy better material, you cannot make it with a better process, there isn't better plating, and there isn't a better design, so there's no way somebody can improve on it. That was our goal when we built it.
America.
America.
God damn it. Off-Road Vet said, we have the rack and it's been amazing. So that's awesome, Off-Road Vet.
Awesome. Glad you guys like it. Thank you.
Yes.
Now that we've talked about the X3 rack a little bit, maybe we can go over there and look at a Polaris rack. One of the reasons we're looking at Polaris right now is because, number one, we're assembling them, but number two, our RS1 racks are now available. So we have racks in the Polaris end for XPs, XP turbos. We have Turbo S racks. We have RS1 racks. And here shortly, in the next few weeks, we'll have an XP Pro rack for all of you guys that we've left out of the ability to buy one. Sorry about that, but it takes us a while to design this stuff and make it perfect so that it doesn't come back.
Hey, boy, is that rack done over there?
That one, yes, sir, it is.
Can you hand
What
it
rack
to
have you
me?
got there?
Here's that.
I think that's a Turbo S.
They wanted to see the Polaris compared to the CanAm Rack, size difference wise.
That's a major deal right there. So a lot of people ask why the X3 racks are $2,000. Well, there's one reason right there. You can see the size difference in components, material, and that also comes down to labor. So the Polaris rack is a simpler rack to build. There's less parts involved, less material, smaller everything. The X3 rack is a beast of material. One fun fact, not that fun, but for machinists it's very fun, that the two pieces of aluminum that we start with for this rack body, this upper half and this lower half, are 52 pounds of aluminum when we start. When we are done, that 52 pounds is whittled down to 8.5. That's a lot of material that we have to buy that you end up not getting because we need that much material to machine these parts.
Good job, Jason.
We have a question from Mike Dubs. He said, 2,000, y'all got layaway?
No, we don't. I'm sorry. Working on that. What do you got, Matt?
JT Funk says, I've had one of your early X3 steering racks, about 3,000 miles on it. Do you ever recommend having it inspected and serviced?
Yes, we do. The reason that we want to have the rack back for inspection and service, as I mentioned before, we do it for free. And we said that when we first marketed the rack and told you that we stand behind it for lifetime. We want to see what the racks go through over time and make improvements to it if we need to. We have made a couple of small changes in the rack from day one, but they haven't been major and they really haven't needed it. But we've made those changes because of things we've seen. So I would suggest calling the guys at the shop and setting up a time to get that rack off your car sent in here. We'll rebuild it. Actually, Lolo will rebuild it and she will get it right back to you. If you have an appointment for it, we'll get it done right away. And it will be free. Unless you have wearing items, we're going to charge you for wearing items, which is going to be the bronze bushing or the bearings, and that's it. Everything else is free.
Skylar Howell's in the chat room. He said
What's
those
happening, Skylar?
racks are amazing.
Skylar would know. He has won many races with Brandon Sims with our racks in that car.
Kevin Burke, no relation.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Thanks for throwing the Pro XP some love.
Yeah, no problem, man. We just it takes us a while to get to this stuff because I shouldn't say it takes us a while to get to it. It takes us a while to do them because we spend a lot of time on the parts, a lot of time in design. That's for sure. More rack love.
We got a question coming in.
Steve is talking about shafts, actually.
I got RJ here. RJ, what's
Like
going
Richard
on, man?
Jeffries?
We got a live one, not RJ Jeffries.
Okay.
How you doing, man? You got a question? Where are you at? What are you driving?
I'm in Norco, California, driving a Turbo Lad.
Awesome, brother.
Slay.
Badass. Norco's nice.
My question is, why is the XP Turbo so smaller than the CanAm?
Good question, man. You might have to ask the guys that designed it over at Polaris. I mean, I can tell you that the suspension design, geometry-wise, in a Polaris is much different than a CanAm, and so you could run a smaller rack. I think CanAm would probably run a smaller one if they could, but the way they've designed their system and clearances between the diff, the firewall, steering, and everything else, they don't have the option of doing a smaller design like Polaris did. I don't think one is better than the other than the cost because it's so big.
Well, also, too, I wish we had a stock rack. The stock rack is about as, I mean, we're pretty comparable inside. Do we have a stock one?
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
the stock one is
Grab
pretty
it.
comparable.
So
To
it's not because
the
we
actual
designed it that
size.
way,
We
it's
didn't design
because
it that
Polaris designed it that way. So there's a stock one from Polaris versus ours. Yeah, and then take a look at the stock rack for CanAm and ours. So it's an initial design from the factory that we have to stay within. It's not because we decided to make it smaller.
Cool. Thank you, Justin.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for signing in. Give us a shirt size and a color, and we will find out if Chase can do his job. It is a new year. We'll see. Maybe he's turned over a
New
Do you
Year,
have-
same Chase.
Chase, do you have a New Year's resolution that you're going to follow for this year?
There's definitely one I'm gonna follow. You're gonna love it, and I made it just for you, Justin. It's something that
A
I've been working on-
resolution
yeah,
or something else?
Wait, hold on.
resolution.
Hold on.
Hold on. Go ahead.
I'm gonna try to wear deodorant every day.
Hold on. There is no way.
There's no way.
No way. You guys should all bet him money.
Get that one done this year. Last year, all the years before, no so.
Can we add showers to that, too?
I've definitely seen Justin has bought you deodorant in the bathroom here.
I actually
Don't use it.
bought you a complete kit as a hint.
spray, everything.
And then an Axe spray, full Axe kit. I'm like, Chase, this stays here and you're gonna have this on you at all times. And I'm it's like, still doesn't do it.
It's a friendship test, you know?
No.
There's been a couple of videos we have filmed where, like, Chase has walked by Justin and Justin about throws up. Because like, he can't even, like, remember the walkthrough?
I was
It was
just
great.
gonna say, why do you think I have candles lit? And you know that's
Everywhere.
why everyone else has candles lit now. I've seen it. All
Somebody
through the
said, I wonder why there has been a candle lit
Oh,
on the
yeah.
workbench.
There-
It's because his smelly ass. All right.
That's right. So if you guys have more questions about rack design or why we do what we do and or why you should upgrade to these, then let us know. We'll touch upon it. But you know what? As far as upgrades are concerned, go ahead, Steve.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Like, would you call this a double D and this a B? Or what would you call it?
Well, yeah, that's actually visually, yeah.
Okay, all right, just
I think
checking.
so.
I didn't know if we had a name for
Which
it.
one's your favorite, Steve?
Let's throw some D's on that.
I know what you guys were talking about for a second.
So, Lola, it was like NASCAR.
I should have known that, and I was like, what?
Steve, I think you actually
I
embarrassed
did
her.
admit, I got it. I told her I would do it, and I got it. Look at her. Oh, look at her.
Ah, no, look at me.
I knew it.
Hey, you can hand it right back to him with pinion shaft lengths or something. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We got a lot of questions coming in here.
Send it.
Send it.
What do you got for questions? Let's touch upon those because I think we've kind of covered everything on racks. The reason that we do X3 stuff is to stop steering wheel feedback, prevent rack repair or damage, and also makes it a lot smoother and easier to drive an X3 with the rack, and it prevents EPS or power steering failures. Polaris stuff, the reason we do Polaris stuff is they tend to have a breakage right in the center of the rack gear. Over time, this pinion will pinch the factory rack gear, and this rack gear will come out on both sides. And that failure is the reason why we built that in the first place. Steve, what have you got?
Rich Fortin said, Chase, as a New Year's resolution, you should think about doing your job this year.
Why, thank you, and I will consider it.
Damn.
Which will be sweeping the floor soon.
Justin, you just perfectly answered Sinister 87's question, which is, what is the advantage of your race rack over stock for strength?
Yeah.
We got some oddball questions coming here. Josh YB17, if I drive a 900S and do East Coast riding, could I expect to get the same? Is he talking about the rack, you think?
No, I don't know that our rack fits the S.
No.
No,
so 900S and 1000S.
You didn't finish the question.
What is the question?
The question was, if I drive an 900S and do East Coast riding, can I expect the same plushness that an XP has with
Oh, I
RC?
had the top half of it.
Okay, so you didn't finish
So
the
he's
question.
talking about shock and spring package.
Yeah, that's not racks. Throw that out there on Thursday.
Yeah. So I will answer you really quick. Yes, the plush factor is going to go through the roof. Will you ride the same as an XP? XP has bigger shock and more travel, so it's hard to equate to that. But if your car with our work was compared to a stock XP, it's going to ride better. If your stock XP had our work, then your car will not ride as plush as an XP. But you can certainly be better than a stock one by a long shot. Okay, back to this.
I don't know
Back
if
to
this
our
is a real
currently
one or
scheduled
not, and it's totally
program.
off subject, but it's on my subject. Can you supercharge a YXZ
Oh, dear God.
with paddle shifters?
I was waiting for him to ask about a YXZ rack too. I was waiting.
No, so we don't make YXZ rack, but you know who does is Weller. So see them for any billet wax for a YXZ.
Awesome.
And you see that deflection on the supercharger.
Yeah, I did. I like that. Yeah, bam,
Boom.
avoided it.
Completely.
Yep.
So if you guys don't have any more questions, then we're going to get out of here. I bet you do, though. There's got to be more
We
stuff.
got a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions, but not necessarily having to do with racks.
Okay,
so
how about
if
this?
you want questions that don't have to do with racks, I got a few of them. But
All
other
right,
than
top 5 questions right now. Super fast. Ask
Okay.
Lauren.
Sierra Hitters, is the power in the X3RR a lot more noticeable than the XP Pro or not much? Question mark.
I don't know.
Again, RR and Pro. I don't think it's noticeably bigger. I think that they're about the same. They both haul ass.
Can your coils be powder coated?
You can powder coat coils. Lauren, here we go. Come on back.
Remember, Lord, you wanted questions.
Yeah, you asked for
I
it.
did. No, if you want, so we warranty them, even though they never break, but we won't warranty them if you powder coat them.
Right. The reason is we cannot monitor every powder coater in the world, and a lot of them don't strip the powder coat correctly. They overheat the springs, ruin the spring, ruins the warranty. So, can you powder coat them? Yes. Quality powder coater. Will we do it? No. And will we recommend it? No. We will not warranty them after they're powder coated.
Install price for an X3 race rack?
$200.
I believe it's
sounds
$3.
good.
$200.
Okay, 300?
I believe it's $3.
What is it? Steve,
I believe it's
answer
$3.
your own question.
I believe it's
Sorry.
$300.
Okay.
It's your
Now, XP is much cheaper, isn't it?
Yes, XP is, I believe, $200.
200
Maybe
for an
100.
XP, 300 for an X3.
Will the Smart Shock system be affected by the race rack?
It will
Why
not
am I
be
reading it like
effective.
that?
I don't know.
I'm just
It's
trying,
'cause
I'm
it's
trying, to,
rapid fire,
I'm trying to
man.
get them rapid.
We should have buzzers.
Yeah, so no, the rack does not affect any of the Smart Shock systems whatsoever.
Somebody said, what if you tape over the number then powder coat it? No.
No.
You didn't powder coat a little spot. No.
The overheating is still the issue, you guys. Come on.
Oh, man. I don't know. What are the 5 things you would change on your stock X3?
I would defer
He's talking, not me.
I would defer to our video on our channel about making a bulletproof X3, and that'll give you all the details. But if you don't watch the stuff, like most people don't watch any of our instructions, I will tell you need a shock brace, you need a double shear kit, you need a front bumper, probably tying in the shock brace with the double shear kit. I would support the lower arm. I would support the trailing arm, and I would do radius rods. Those are my 5.
That was 6. That was pretty good.
Okay.
All right. Final question, Justin, and we get this
Promise?
one all the time. From Christopher Cristalli. So I have a 64-inch, and I'm converting to a 72. Nay.
We have a video about that process, too.
With the 2.5 shocks. Do you think I should tune my shocks in the meantime before I do the swap?
No.
Don't.
You should do everything after you've done the swap. But I would go back to our YouTube channel and look at 6472 video. I think, what's the title on that, Chase? I know that's when Steve and Matt are going back and
Yeah,
forth.
that's 72 versus 64.
Is it 72 versus 64?
Well, he's the
in video?
64. I'm 72.
So 72 versus 64, that video on our YouTube channel will tell you all the things that you're going to bang your head against the wall trying to do that conversion. So that'll be helpful. Maybe it might even talk you out of doing it. But at least you know what you're in for. So go look at that.
There's one more good question.
One more last
One
question.
more.
I
This
have
is
one specifically for Justin too.
This is it from Wet Detail. I feel dirty even saying that name. And then someone else asked the same kind of question. How important are limit straps to shocks?
In my opinion, it's extremely important and probably something you should do with any shock work or spring kit. It didn't used to be, my opinion, 5 years ago. The reason is smaller wheels and tires back then, lighter weight suspension packages, and really not everybody had the power back then and didn't run these cars that hard. Now, that's not the case. You've got stronger arm packages, bigger axle, bigger wheel and tire packages, and that weight that's hanging on that shock, fully extended, over time does destroy parts. And it does have a clunk to it. So I think that limit straps are an absolute must. I actually had a long conversation with one of the biggest race teams in UTVs right now who is converting everything to limit straps, and they fought it for years. So it's happening. Trust me, it's going to become normal, and if not, you should definitely do it.
Mike Tubbs has a question he wants you guys to think about. If I bring beer and tacos, would there be an install discount? And then Justin, here's the question I have for you from TLC Racer. Are you doing King of Hammers?
Not doing King of Hammers. We have about 30 teams that we support that are. We're going to let them represent. We're concentrating on Best in the Desert this year and also the Mint and UTV Championship as far as our race team is concerned.
Okay, I think Chase is illiterate. Because the guy said, are you doing installs at King of the Hammers? Not are you racing King of the Hammers?
Come on,
I'm trying to find these questions. I'm like, what is he talking about? Do your job.
No, we're not going to be doing installs at Hammers. We're going to be there with a small booth this year.
At Hammers?
Yeah.
With all the COVID stuff, the requirements just to get in the gate.
Yeah, we're done this year. So maybe next year, you guys, we have considered and had big conversations about doing installs at Hammers. So not this year, but next year.
Holy cow, I just got a fantasy question.
Oh, God.
How about the race rack from the Speed
dear
UTV?
God. If you'd like to buy our parts.
So, yeah, imaginary parts, we've got plenty of those in stock. Just go to the website and look up Magic next to the unicorn signal.
That's all I got, unless Chase wants to read something illiterately.
I'm holding the cameras and reading, Steve. Come on.
And Lauren, do you feel like everybody gave you a little bit more time this time?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
And you think that Steve embarrassed you just a little bit?
No, that was embarrassment of myself not knowing raw stuff. Being the only chick right here.
Well, good job. Good job, Lauren. You're a great sport.
Thank you.
Sorry to mess with you the whole time. You got another one, Steve, or are you done?
It's up to you. There's one more decent question.
This is the last one.
One more.
Yeah.
Will shock tuning help the steering wheel vibration on my X3 RS?
So it can, but it's going to be like 1 out of the 10 factors that are causing your problem. So steering wheel vibration could be balance, it could be EPS unit, it could be worn out rack, it could be wheel offset, it could be tire sidewall stiffness. Usually wheel offset and worn out rack are going to be the major causes for that you're talking about. If any of those problems exist and then you do the shock work, a lot of times that vibration can get worse because the shock is actually functioning and moving more plush, and it will show you a lot more of the vibrations that are in that scenario. So look at all the other things first beforehand.
Our man Mike Dub just wanted to say that Lauren got the shaft on that question.
Yes, yes, she did. And I apologize. Please go see HR after the video.
I am HR.
Thank you guys. Appreciate your help. Thanks for showing us rack stuff. You guys, thanks for tuning in. Sorry we missed you during the holidays, but we had to take some time off. But we're back. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, that means Thursday is Throw It Out There Thursday. So why don't you guys give us some suggestions for more live feeds, suggestions for Throw It Out There Thursday, and maybe we can cover some uncomfortable subjects that might be worth having Steve chime in.
I can help out with that.
There you go.
Now, Justin.
Matt, what?
We do have Tom Ames, who's apparently standing outside watching the video because his car is over here and he's been busting the
Ames,
seams
yes.
to show his car on.
Oh, well, Tom,
What is it, Matt?
let us
This one.
let's make your wish come true, Tom.
No, Tom Ames is
Right
that
here.
one. Yeah, I'll say it's one of the pros.
Well, here's Tom Ames' car, XP Pro two-seater with
black.
Okay, sorry.
which one?
It's the black and red one, not the red and black one.
Oh, I see. Very cool. Well, as you guys can see, full spring kits, full shock internals, dynamics car. XP Pro, I will tell you this. I love me an XP Pro. They're a ton of fun. They're really fast and they work really well. So, Tom, thank you very much for dropping your car off, and thanks for hanging out, and thanks for watching the feed. Thank you to everybody else who is watching the feed, and please tell your friends, come on over and join the party, because Steve loves to mess with more people.
Yes.
That's for sure. And so is Lauren. We might bring her back in the next couple of times and try and embarrass her again.
Done.
More suggestions. Tech Tuesday, we're out. If you have questions, call us at the shop, 623-217-4959. And Steve, let them know where to go buy parts.
Oh, you can go to our website at www.shocktherapist.com.